Chapter 1, Overview of Nutrition. It's hard to believe that you've eaten over 20,000 meals in your life. Whether you realize it or not, nutrition has played a significant role in your daily food choices. Many factors will influence the food choices that you make. In Chapter 1, we will learn why we make our food choices, the classes of nutrients, the science of nutrition, dietary reference intakes, nutrition assessment, and diet and health. First, let's get some definitions out of the way. Nutrition is an actual science. It is the science of foods and the nutrients and other substances contained in food and their actions within the body. Nutrition includes social, economic, cultural, and psychological reasons we choose the foods we eat. Food, basically, are products derived from plants or animals that can be taken into the body to yield energy and nutrients for the maintenance of life and the growth and repair of tissues. Also included is diet. Your diet are the food and beverage choices that you make. So why do we eat the foods we do? These are the top 3 reasons. The number 1 reason we choose what we eat is taste and flavor. That hot dog tastes really good. Ice cream is extremely yummy. The next reason we choose foods is out of habit. If you grew up eating cereal for breakfast, most likely, even as an adult, you still choose cereal for breakfast. The next reason is heritage. Heritage is an extremely strong influence on the foods you eat. These are the childhood foods that you were exposed to. Here we see some pictures of reasons why we choose the foods we do. Health benefit is another reason we choose the foods we eat, such as the vitamins and phytochemicals that the strawberries offer. Again, body weight and body image is another reason we choose the foods we eat. Sometimes we feel that we need to be healthier, quote unquote. Therefore, we restrict foods, or we find that we need to eat more foods. And here you see a personal preference, heritage, and habit. Other reasons are social interactions. People are social, and we love to eat when we get together. Availability and convenience. The fast-paced, toxic environment here in the U.S. offers itself for cheap, fast food. Positive associations include getting food rewards for being good. This little girl is enjoying her ice cream with her puppy. She will probably grow to enjoy ice cream and eating it with her dog as an adult. So let's meet the nutrients. There are 6 classes of nutrients: minerals, water, carbohydrate, lipids, protein, and vitamins. These nutrients help keep us fueled and healthy. Notice that they are broken into 2 classes, inorganic and organic. The inorganic nutrients include the minerals and water. Organic nutrients are carbohydrate, lipid, protein, and vitamins. It is important to understand for this class, when I say organic, I mean that it contains carbon, not how the food was grown. Nutrients are essential and necessary. They are chemical substances that we obtain from our food. They provide the energy to do work and the structural material for the body. Nutrients also help regulate body growth, maintenance, and repair, and some nutrients may even reduce the risk of certain diseases, such as vitamin C can help prevent scurvy. Here you see the nutrient composition of a healthy weight man and a healthy weight woman. Pay attention that all 6 nutrients are accounted for in these percentages. 19 to 27% of body weight comes from carbohydrate, protein, vitamins, and minerals. 13 to 31% of our body weight comes from fat. Now this will depend on gender, with females carrying much more body fat percent than males. 60% of our body weight is water. Water accounts for the most weight in the body. Nutrients are classed on how much the body needs of each one per day. You have macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients mean we need these nutrients in large amounts, typically in many grams per day. The macronutrients are also our energy-yielding nutrients, which are carbohydrate, protein, and fat. The macronutrients will provide calories for the work that we do. They also provide the raw materials for building body tissue and regulating many activities. The energy-yielding nutrients have a certain energy in kilocalories per gram associated with them. It will be very important that you understand how many kilocalories for each one of these macronutrients. Carbohydrate will provide 4 kilocalories per gram. Fat will provide 9 kilocalories per gram, and protein will provide 4 kilocalories per gram. As you see, alcohol can contribute 7 kilocalories per gram that can be used for energy, but it is not considered a nutrient because it actually will interfere with the body's metabolism. So let's look at calculating the energy available in our foods. The example I use is a bean burrito with cheese. The bean burrito has 55 grams of carbohydrate, 15 grams of protein, and 12 grams of fat. So how many calories are in the bean burrito? First, to find the calories from carbohydrate, you take 55 grams of carbohydrate times 4 kilocalories per gram, and that equals 220 calories from carbohydrate. Next, you have 15 grams of protein multiplied by 4 kilocalories per gram, and that equals 60 calories from protein. And last, you have 12 grams from fat. Multiply that by 9 kilocalories per gram to get 108 calories from fat. You add these three numbers up, and the bean burrito has a grand total of 388 calories. Next, we will shift to the micronutrients. The micronutrients are required in very small amounts, and they do not provide energy. The micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and water. They are essential and necessary because without them, we still will not be able to live. The vitamins are required to facilitate the release of energy from carbohydrate, fat, and protein. The minerals have many roles in body structure and support, and they assist in fluid balance. And water provides the medium for all body activities. In nutrition, it's important for us to think metric. Everything we do in this course will be on the metric scale. So it will be important to understand the conversion from an English unit to a metric unit. You will need to memorize all of these conversions listed on this slide. Energy density is a concept that we will continue to study throughout this course. Energy density basically is the measure of the energy a food provides relative to the amount of food. We find high energy dense foods contribute to weight gain, while low energy dense foods contribute to weight loss. Well, how is this? Well, let's find out. We're going to compare two 500 kilocalorie or calorie, they're synonymous, breakfasts. On the left, we have what's considered a less energy-dense breakfast, and the breakfast on the right is a more energy-dense breakfast. Both breakfasts provide 500 calories, but the breakfast on the left weighs 450 grams, while the breakfast on the right weighs 144 grams. Another way to think of it is the breakfast on the left gives you much more nutrient bang for the buck. You have fruit, which is offering your carbohydrate in the form of fruit sugars. You also have bread, which is another carbohydrate, and if it's whole wheat bread, it is also offering fiber, vitamins, and minerals. The eggs are a really good protein source, along with the sausage link, which will also provide some fat. Here you have the bran flakes with banana, and again, you're getting some good complex carbohydrate, another fruit, and here is your low-fat dairy. And you even get your cup of black coffee. When we move to the right, the two donuts basically provide sugar and fat, along with your cup of black coffee. So now we're going to look at how nutrition is considered a science. Nutrition is rooted in the sciences. It marries the fields of chemistry, biology, genetics, anatomy and physiology, and biochemistry, just to name a few. When we look at the science of nutrition, we're studying how nutrients and the other substances in foods impact our health and well-being, and how we handle these substances. A new growing field is the study of nutritional genomics. This field has grown since the completion of the Human Genome Project. Basically, nutritional genomics looks at how nutrients affect the activity of genes and also how genes affect the interactions between diet and disease. Being rooted in the sciences means that nutritionists will conduct research. It is important when you are reading nutrition information that you're reading credible information. Credible scientific research has these components. The studies will have controls. They will have an experimental group versus a placebo group. The groups will be randomized. You'll have a large sample size. You will have what's called double blind, meaning the experimental group, along with the researchers, do not know if they are in the control or the experiment group. You also have the research undergo a peer review to ensure its accuracy. Hearsay or testimonials are the weakest form of scientific evidence, and these are typically the evidence given with dietary supplements. Next, let's look at different research designs. There are three types of research: epidemiological, laboratory-based, and human intervention or clinical trials. Each of these three have their strengths and their weaknesses. An epidemiological study basically will look at the incidence and distribution of a disease within a population, such as heart disease. The strengths of these studies means that they can narrow down the list of possible causes of heart disease, and they can raise questions to pursue through other types of study. A weakness of an epidemiological study means they cannot control variables that may influence the development or the prevention of the heart disease in this example, and they cannot prove a cause and effect. A laboratory-based study basically explores the effect of specific variables on a tissue, cell, or molecule. A lot of times, laboratory-based studies are often conducted in test tubes or on animals. Some strengths are you can control the conditions and you can determine the effects of a variable. But the weakness is we cannot always apply the results from a test tube or an animal to a human being. Human intervention or clinical trials basically involve human beings who will be followed for a specific regimen. Some strengths are you can control the conditions for the most part, and you can apply the findings to most groups of human beings. The weaknesses include you can't generalize findings to all human beings, and you cannot use certain treatments for clinical or ethical reasons. So, let's look at research altogether. We're going to use vitamin C as our example. Does it really cure the common cold? When we're using the scientific method and we're conducting our research, everything always starts as an observation and a question. A scientist identifies a problem to be solved or asks a specific question to be answered. Here, we're asking, does vitamin C really cure the common cold? So, the scientist will formulate a hypothesis and make a prediction. A hypothesis would state, yes, vitamin C taken at such and such doses will cure the common cold. Then they're going to design an experiment, and they're going to use the credible scientific research methods that I spoke of previously, meaning they'll have controls, they'll have an experimental group versus placebo group, they'll randomize the groups, they'll have a large sample size, they'll make sure it's double-blind, and when the experiment is complete, it will undergo a peer review. They will conduct the experiment, and they will collect the relevant data on the individuals. And when you break them into the two groups, of course the experimental group will receive vitamin C, and the non-experimental group will receive some sort of placebo. At the end of the experiment, the results will be interpreted, and they'll be summarized, analyzed, and they will draw conclusions to see if the hypothesis was supported or not supported. If the hypothesis that vitamin C taken at certain amounts really does cure the common cold, it will either, one, become a theory that integrates those conclusions with those from other studies through the peer review process, stating that yes, this does seem to continually occur with vitamin C treatment, or if the hypothesis is supported, it will also drive new observations and questions, and they will continue to redo the vitamin C experiment. This is where peer review comes in, and also an experiment must be able to be replicated for it to be valid. If the hypothesis is not supported, so vitamin C did not cure the common cold, let's say it actually made you more sick, it might make a new observation and question, and it might spur another hypothesis and prediction, and spur another experiment. Next, we're going to move on to the dietary reference intakes. The dietary reference intakes are recommendations for how much of a nutrient that we need, which is based on research studies. These are the standards for us to have adequate nutrient intakes. It's important to understand that the dietary reference intakes, or the DRIs, apply only to healthy people. As we move forward, please make sure that you try not to get too confused, because the DRIs can actually seem like a soup of letters. The first DRI, or dietary reference intake, we meet is called the EAR, the estimated average requirement. This is the average daily amount of a nutrient sufficient for 50% of the healthy people in a given age and gender group. An EAR will maintain specific biochemical or physiological function or adequacy in the body. But it's important to remember that there is the potential for half the population to develop deficiency over time. Once an ear is established and we know how much of a nutrient is needed to keep 50% of the healthy population in an adequate range, we can develop what's called an RDA, or recommended daily allowance. What happens is there's fancy math that occurs, and the average daily amount of the nutrient considered adequate to meet the needs of 98% of healthy individuals is developed, and that becomes the RDA. An RDA can actually be used as a goal for individual dietary intake. Now let's compare an ear versus an RDA. On the left, you see that the ear, the bell curve, is here. At an ear intake, you see that 50% will have adequate intake while the other 50% will not. When we do the fancy math and we find out what 98% is, you see that an RDA is established here. And you see that the majority of the population of healthy individuals will, if they take an RDA amount of that specific nutrient, will not develop a deficiency. Next is an adequate intake, or an AI. An adequate intake is set when scientific evidence cannot determine an ear. This is used instead of an RDA. An adequate intake can reflect the average amount of a nutrient a group of healthy people needs to consume. An IA can also be used as a nutrient intake goal for individuals. The tolerable upper intake level, or the UL, this is when too much of a good thing goes bad. This is the point where a nutrient intake can become toxic. This typically occurs with large dose supplement use. Now let's put the DRIs together. Like I said, more is not always better. In the inaccurate view, which is where most Americans fall, they find that you have the RDA, but they feel that if you take above the RDA, that it's safe and that there will be no problems. Well, the accurate view actually is here. You have your RDA, which is set at the 98%, or your adequate intake. These are your daily intake goals. As long as you stay between your RDA, or adequate intake, and your tolerable upper intake level, you're in the safety zone. Also, you see here you have your ear. Between the ear and the RDA or AI, you're still in a safety zone, though remember 50% of the population could still develop some type of deficiency. Below the ear, you have a marginal, and then as you go down, you have a danger of deficiency. And then as you go up above your tolerable upper level intake, there is a marginal area that might still be considered safe, but you're on the cusp of entering into the danger of toxicity. Next, we're going to determine our calorie needs. This is still part of the DRIs. This is called the estimated energy requirement. The EER is the average daily energy intake needed to maintain energy balance in a person with a healthy body weight and appropriate physical activity level. Here in this class, the formula that we will use is a healthy body weight times 10 times an activity factor will equal the calories that you need to meet your estimated energy requirement. I will discuss this further in Diet Study 1. The macronutrients actually have ranges, and they're called acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges. Basically, the AMDR means the composition of the diet that will provide adequate energy and nutrients to reduce the risk for chronic disease. As you see, 45 to 65% of your daily kilocalories should come from carbohydrates. 20 to 35% of your kilocalories should come from fat. 10 to 30% of your kilocalories should come from protein. So, how do we know a person's nutrition status? Well, we take a nutrition assessment. A nutrition assessment will give a good overall snapshot of a person's health. There are 4 parts to the nutrition assessment. The first part is a health, socioeconomic, drug and diet history. Next, you take anthropometric measures. Then, you have a physical examination. And the last part are laboratory tests. A nutrition assessment can determine symptoms of malnutrition. Malnutrition, by definition, is either an excess or deficient energy or nutrient intake. Undernutrition means deficient energy or nutrients. Overnutrition means an excess energy or nutrition or nutrients. If you have an over deficiency, your symptoms are actually easy to observe. They're overtly visible. This would include the flat fingernails of iron deficiency. A covert deficiency means the symptoms are hidden. This is typically determined by laboratory tests. An example would mean low hemoglobin. Here we have some other pictures showing nutrient deficiencies. You see the flat nails of iron deficiency. This is thiamine deficiency, which is beriberi. We will learn this more in detail in a later chapter. You see that you have dry beriberi and you have wet beriberi. Wet beriberi meaning there's edema associated with it. This is vitamin C deficiency, scurvy, but also we have some gingivitis going on. Let's look at nutrient deficiency and how it can be determined during a nutrition assessment. During a primary deficiency, which basically is caused by an inadequate diet, or a secondary deficiency, which is caused by a problem inside the body, these can be determined using diet history and health history. Primary and secondary deficiencies will eventually lead to declining nutrient stores, which is subclinical, and abnormal functions inside the body. When this happens, laboratory tests can reveal the subclinical and covert nutrition deficiency. As the nutrient deficiency progresses, the physical signs and symptoms, or the overt outward signs, become apparent. When this happens, you can determine the nutrient deficiency during the physical examination and during anthropometric measures. It is important to know the nutritional status of our populations. There are several different surveys that will determine the nutrition and health status here of Americans. The 3 that we look at are What We Eat in America, the NHANES studies, and Healthy People 2020. These nutrition assessments of populations basically help set goals for Americans for good health and quality of life. These are the top health goals in this country. We look at healthful populations to determine what they do to stay healthy, and then we look at less healthy populations to help determine what kind of public health education programs are required to help them become more healthful. That way, we create targeted programs that reach the population in question. So, diet and health. We know that there are important roles that diet plays in health. But did we realize that the top 3 causes of death in the United States actually are diet related? Food plays a vital role in supporting our health. In America, our top priority is to help focus on eliminating deficiencies and also chronic disease risks. Heart disease, cancer, and strokes, which are the top 3 leading causes of death in the U.S., have an extremely strong component or an extremely strong tie to your diet. Now let's look at the factors contributing to death in the United States. These are risk factors. Tobacco users, poor diet inactivity, and alcohol use are the top 3 factors contributing to death in the United States. Tobacco can actually interfere with certain nutrient absorption and functions. Tobacco users actually have a higher need for vitamin C than non-tobacco users. Poor diet and inactivity, well, this one's a no-brainer. We see this in the obesity crisis here in the U.S., which is accounting for many deaths each year. It is actually now classified as its own disease. So poor diet and inactivity, just by its sheer nature, will lead to a higher likelihood of death. Alcohol is a risk factor for death for many reasons. 2 that I will discuss are alcohol binges, sweets, high-calorie foods, which can lead to increased risk for overweight, obesity. Also, we have Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is a thiamine deficiency, which can lead to death. And also, alcohol abuse can lead to fatty liver, which can progress to cirrhosis, liver failure, and therefore death. Now we're going to shift gears and figure out, how do we know if the nutrition information that we're reading is actually credible? Do not fall prey to schemes. Make sure you know the validity of the information. Who's providing the information? Remember, valid nutrition or science information will go through a peer review process. Did the research follow the scientific method? Do you know the person who's published the information? Did they provide their credentials? Are they valid? Are they legal credentials? On the internet, anyone can publish anything. So there is no guarantee that the information you read on a specific website is accurate. Remember to do your homework. News agencies often tell lopsided stories. They don't do their homework. They use testimonials as their evidence. Remember, testimonials are the weakest form of scientific evidence. Most of the time, news agencies or reporters or journalists are on tight deadlines, and they have a very limited understanding of what the research might actually be saying. What they will sometimes do is piecemeal information from research to fit their needs. So, how do you know if the person who's writing the article is valid? Well, nutrition experts are physicians and other healthcare professionals. Though their training in nutrition is limited, they should be apprised and up to date on the current valid information on nutrition. A registered dietitian and a dietetic technician registered, these are actually nutrition experts. These two individuals have gone to college and earned a degree and completed a clinical internship and passed a national exam on nutrition. They are both required to maintain up-to-date knowledge in the field of nutrition to assist their clients. If you see something that looks too good to be true, it probably is. So we're going to sum things up here with this last slide. Dietary supplements are notorious for nutrition misinformation. Here are the things that you should look for and make you kind of scratch your head to think, are you really looking at valid information? Marketers are wonderful at getting us to buy things. Satisfaction guaranteed. It offers an easy and quick fix. Natural is always used to help draw you in. Remember, natural is not always necessarily better or safer. One product does it all. There is no miracle pill. No one product can possibly treat such a diverse array of conditions. Time tested. If it's time tested, you should be able to go and find credible, peer-reviewed scientific information to hold up the claims on the bottle. Paranoid accusations, personal testimonials, and last but not least, meaningless medical jargon to make you think that it's scientific. This concludes Chapter 1, an overview of nutrition. You should now understand food choices and nutrients, the science behind nutrition, the dietary reference intakes, a nutrition assessment, diet and its role in your health, and nutrition information and misinformation.